Welcome. I'm Aaron. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and I'm also an alcoholic. I want to welcome everybody to Lighthouse Church virtual Celebrate Recovery for this week. This is large group time that's actually being filmed. Here it is on Wednesday morning in front of a completely empty church. I got to say that's one of the things that I've had to get used to is how to do a lesson or a message in front of absolutely nobody. And it has been a challenge at times because I miss you guys and I miss being able to interact and have the dialogue back and forth during large group time. And so I hope this message finds everybody in good spirits. And I want to let you know a few announcements is that we will be having Celebrate Recovery small group time on Thursday between 7 and 8 o'clock. So guys, you go straight down to the House of Hope at 7 and go back to the same group that you were in last week. We're trying to minimize our exposure to other people. So I ask that you come in, head straight to the room where your group was last week, and utilize the hand sanitizers as you come in. If you are new coming, you are free to join any of the groups as long as they are smaller than 10. Women, you head straight to the church and go back to the same groups you were in last week. Same deal, use the hand sanitizers as you come in. Maintain your social distances as you come in and go back to the same group you were in last week. If you're new, feel free to go to one of the other groups, any of the groups, as long as there's less than 10 people in the group. So we've been kind of going through the lessons of Celebrate Recovery, but we're not actually allowed to use the lessons or the acrostics or the typical lessons that you would hear for Celebrate Recovery due to copyright things, and Celebrate Recovery has made it clear at a national level that they don't want us utilizing those. So I'm actually doing my own lessons to replace those lessons because we're not going to be able to go back and cover them. And so the lesson I'm doing today actually is in replacement to lesson 7, which is on sponsor. Or titled sponsor, and it actually goes with step 4, which we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And the scripture that goes with that is, let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord. And that's Lamentations 3:40. I think sponsorship is vital in our recovery program because it's important to remember that recovery is a we program. We don't take the journey alone. We travel our life recovery journey foremost with God. Our relationship with God is the most important relationship in life, for which there is no substitute. Absolutely nothing in life can be put before it. Not the girlfriend, the boyfriend, the husband, the wife, children, parents, the job, drinking, drugs, our emotions, money. Absolutely nothing can be allowed to be put before it or even held equal in value to it. Our relationship with God is most important. Relationship with others are vital too. After creation, God made Adam, the first man. And in Genesis, we read Genesis 2:18. God said, it's not good for man to be alone. So he created the first woman, Eve. Thus, the first human relationship began. I feel it is important to point out that the first relationship to exist was that between God and man, establishing it as the first and most important relationship for us to have. It was followed quickly by the relationship among humans. We learn in Genesis 1:26 that God said, let us make human beings in our own image to be like us. Verse 27 goes on to say, so God created human beings in his own image. So we need to look no further than our fellow man to see a glimpse of the image of God. Thus, the relationship between humans was designed to point us towards God, not away from God. Even the first relationship between humans to ever come into existence failed at doing this because both Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge. Neither of them said, you know what, let's stop. God told us not to do this. That relationship didn't work as the design to point us towards God. Something I wanted to point out too is as you study the scriptures and you study the life of Jesus and his teachings, you will start to notice that Jesus constantly points back to the Father, glorifying God. Jesus sets that example for us in our lives, that our relationships are among one another are to point back to Jesus. So we're to model what he did. Just as he pointed to the Father, we are to point one another to God in our relationships. We are designed to be social, interact and relate with others. As John Donne put it, no man is an island, though many of us may have tried to live as if we were. Others of us had all kinds of relationships, but not the right kind. Unhealthy relationships in which we hurt, used, or took advantage of people, or we ourselves were taken advantage of, and we were hurt mentally, emotionally, and physically. Oftentimes, these relationships created deep spiritual and internal damage. If we are honest with ourselves, at times, in some relationships, we were the ones inflicting the pain, and at other times, we are the one having pain inflicted on us. But probably in a lot of your relationships, you'll come to see that it was mutually detrimental. Some of our relationships become more like dual hostage situations because we have no idea how to have a healthy relationship if we are honest with ourselves. In recovery, it's time for this to change. We learn how to have healthy relationships, what they look like, and how to form them. A healthy relationship is one that aids your relationship with God, not takes from it. Other relationships in life should build up, encourage, and fortify our most important relationship, which is with God. Especially our close relationships, including significant others. I too often see members of recovery start to date, oftentimes early in recovery. And when one of them is doing really well, it never seems like the one who is struggling starts doing really well. But usually what seems to happen is that both get pulled down the path and potentially end up returning to the life-controlling issues that they entered recovery to conquer. That's why it's so important for us when we look for relationships to look for relationships that build up our relationship with God. In recovery, healthy relationships are relationships we must seek to cultivate. They don't just happen, they take work. We seek to grow these healthy relationships in our recovery groups, step studies, and our church family. Like everything else in this world, those things of value take time, they take effort, and they take diligence in building. They don't just happen. As we approach step 4 and principle 4, a healthy, genuine relationship with a sponsor and accountability partners will be crucial. The relationship will greatly contribute to your relationship with God and your recovery, possibly more than any other relationship in life. It could easily be argued that your recovery will be limited without such a person to walk alongside you on your life journey. I'm going to cover a few of the reasons it is so important to have a sponsor and accountability partners, and hopefully remove some of the apprehension from forming such relationships. If you're not in recovery, these types of relationships are still crucial. They're crucial for your spiritual development as an individual, but they possibly have different names. I'm going to encourage you still, in recovery or not, to have such relationships, to have close Christian friends that can hold you accountable. Christian friends that you can be open and honest and transparent with. I also encourage you to have relationships with other Christians who are further along in their faith journey and maturity. These relationships will help you grow. That relationship with a Christian who is more mature in their faith than you will resemble that relationship between a sponsor and a sponsee as a person in recovery. My sponsor in my own recovery journey has been absolutely vital to me getting to where I'm at today in life, not just externally, but spiritually, internally, in my personal relationship with God. Last week, I talked to you guys about the importance of meditation and talked to you about, I read a pamphlet about a practice where you could maybe start working towards a two-way prayer relationship with God. And in that pamphlet, it mentioned to have somebody else in your life who lives out two-way prayer. A sponsor can be that person to help you bounce those ideas that come off, those prayers, those things that come from God as you write, to be able to see what he might be able to shed light into what has come as you write. So I'm going to cover just a few things. First, the reasons for having sponsors and accountability partners in our life is as part of God's design for us. Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 tells us, 2 people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help them. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. These are just a few verses that help support God's intention and design for us to have relationships. They also give us an opportunity so that we're no longer bottling things up in life and then reaching for a bottle. But we have a place to let these things come out, where we can know and be known. The second reason, these relationships are pivotal to spiritual formation. They will help you maintain a real and honest view of reality in life as you work your steps. They will hold you accountable to following through with your responsibilities to God, your recovery, yourself, your family, your community. We often jump into the rooms of recovery with these well-intentioned, well-meaning ideas and plans. We're going to do the deal. We're going to work the steps. We're going to follow God. We're going to pray on a daily basis. But soon these things fall by the wayside, especially as we start to get worldly things back, as we start to get the job, as we start to get the money, and we start to get the apartment, and all these things start to come. Soon they start to drift away. An accountability partner and sponsor can help keep you accountable to doing those things that have got you to where you are at to this point in your recovery. They can't do it for you, though. You have to do the work. They can help and guide you in your spiritual journey with God through study of the Bible, prayer and meditation, and study of other spiritual literature. A sponsor can help you get involved with service, which is a key element of recovery. Your sponsor can guide you and direct you in areas of service that you may not have known were possible. And you can jump in and start service in your church, or in your Celebrate Recovery program, or in your community, which will be life-changing. Third, if you utilize them, they will help prevent relapse and foolish decisions in life. They will help you stay on the path of recovery, living out the ways of Jesus. They're likely to see your old self-defeating, dysfunctional behavior surface long before you are aware or willing to acknowledge they are creeping back into your life. We need to stay non-defensive with our sponsor, so he or she is able to effectively confront us with the truth of our lives and behaviors. Let us face it. Most of us love praise, even if it's ruining us. But we hate criticism, even if it would save our very lives. We don't take corrective, constructive criticism well. Possibly it's because in some cases, others have dumped so much futile and demoralizing criticism on us. We thus reject all criticism. Plus, many of us have sensitive, overinflated egos, which we need to start working on deflating. Sounds harsh, doesn't it? But when we start to really look at ourselves and become honest, we start to see how true that is. And you don't want to just pick anyone to start the process of forming sponsor-sponsee relationships with. The relationship has the power to a degree shape your life. Look for someone who is actually and truly doing the deal, walks the walk, and whose walk matches their talk. Has recovery you wish to work towards. Someone who has what you want. Not physically or worldly, but has what you want in recovery, in a relationship with their Creator. in a relationship with other people in their lives? Do they strive for an ongoing and deeper relationship with God? Do they seek God first in life? I can't tell you how many times my sponsor, when I come to him with an issue, a question, a concern, the first thing he asks me is, have I sought God's guidance first in a situation? It takes somebody who lives out that principle to be able to guide and point me in doing so. It's second nature for him to do so. And that's the type of relationship that I want to be able to build with the people I sponsor, is to help them point them to God, who does have the answers, knowing that I do not. Someone who works tirelessly to give back. We do not have anything if we are not giving it away. This principle is so vital and so true. I can't tell you how much in my own experience I have realized that I didn't have a deep and truly profound understanding of how the steps worked in a life, not alone even in my own life, until I started actually working them with other people and watching them to work out and play out in other people's lives, and how it cultivated a relationship with God in their lives. I then was able to start seeing how they worked in my life. I don't know if you caught that subtle difference. They had worked in my life, but I didn't really see how they worked in my life until I started sponsoring others. You want a sponsor who's a good listener, compassionate, caring, but yet do not pity, are not too soft, and are willing to confront your denial and procrastination. You want a sponsor who has a sponsor that they are current with, is comfortable with their own story and sharing it, not just has worked the steps and principles, but lives them on a daily basis, lives out the teachings of the Bible, and earnestly practices the ways of Jesus. A sponsor guides us through the steps. For this reason, a sponsor needs to be someone who has completed their steps and is working on them and is close to completing them. They need to be further along in their steps than you are. They cannot guide where they themselves have not been. It's just the truth. Just as much as you cannot transmit something you have not got. So it's important when you're seeking a sponsor or a close accountability partner that's kind of replacing that sponsor, if you're somebody who's not necessarily in recovery, that you look for somebody who has navigated life situations utilizing the steps in their lives, utilizing God's word and what it has and his plan for our lives. You want somebody you can discuss issues with more in depth, stuff that's, possibly too personal or not appropriate for large group meetings or maybe even a step study. Somebody you can talk to and be completely open and honest. Somebody that you can let in on a deep level, who you can allow to truly know you. I think such relationships we lack societally. They're not popular. They're not really talked about or taught in school. But they are so necessary to your spiritual growth. Someone you can call before you go drink or make a rash decision. This is a difficult one, especially for us alcoholics. We don't want to call somebody and foil our plans that we have made in our heads, because a lot of times we have already come up with these self-deception ideas of what makes it okay. But that's why it's so important for us to have a sponsor that we already have that relationship with, so that we can call them when we get these hairball ideas and talk them through. And they can point out just where we have gone wrong in our line of thinking. In most instances today in my life, I don't even have to, or I should say my sponsor doesn't even have to respond to often what I say. By the time I have voiced my idea that is askew from God's plan and design for my life, I already hear it in what I'm saying as I relate it to him, my own heirs. A sponsor is a non-emotionally involved in your life person who can provide an outside objective second or third party perspective on the things going on in your life and your thought processes. I'm going to repeat this because it's so important. A sponsor is a non-emotionally involved in your life person who can provide an outside objective second or third party perspective on the things going on in your life and your thought processes. If they're too involved emotionally in your life, they will not be able to objectively help you evaluate your life. That's just the truth of it. They're likely to take your side because they feel your pain and your emotions in it. We need somebody in our lives that can be objective to what's going on and to shine light into the truth of life. They guide you. They do not control you or tell you what to do. I don't think I would be to the point where I'm at in my life today if I had somebody in my life who just told me what to do. That's not how we learn. He guided me in the principles and the practices of seeking God, God's wisdom and insight into my life, and how to practice living out and implementing what God directed me to do in my life, which was not always easy, and I often made mistakes. But it was through those mistakes that I learned a deeper understanding of how to communicate with God. They're not to play the role of God in your life and dictate your decisions. Our purpose and our goal in recovery is to live a God-guided life. What they truly have to offer is their own experience, strength, and hope. That's why it's so important that we find somebody who is further along in their faith journey than we are for that vital role in our lives. It's important to remember that a sponsor can resign or be fired. It's not a lifelong position, though it may be sometimes. Sometimes sponsorship and sponsee relationships work. Sometimes they don't work. Sometimes they work for a time or a season of life. Sometimes you and your sponsor might become too close, and the relationship starts to look more like friendship opposed to sponsor-sponsee relationship. And it might be in that instance is to start to seek somebody else, because it is so vital that we have that non-emotionally tied person in our life that can help us look at things and evaluate them. I'm going to encourage you to start looking and talking to people in your groups on Thursday night, and to talk to those that you relate with or that you hear share that you relate with in small group time. I know that these are interesting times, and a lot of people can't go out and about. They can't come to small group time. In North Dakota, we're still able to meet. In a lot of states, you're not. Right over the river in Minnesota, you're not. That's why it's so important that you reach out to other people via phone or video messaging. Start forming those relationships. Actually, this is an opportunity. Many people talk about how hard it is to build a relationship with God because they cannot see them. And I'm going to tell you, there's not some magical thing about because I can see somebody, it's easier to build a relationship, a deep and meaningful one. That's just not true. But it might be time that you can utilize this time to start building a deep and meaningful relationship over a phone with another person, and prove to yourself that that is possible, that you can have those type of relationships. I'm regularly in communication, even in the midst of this, with my sponsees and many, many, many of my friends in recovery and people who hold me accountable. Via phone and video chat and text message, we're utilizing technology to be able to have these relationships, knowing that one day we will be able to meet in person again. It's important for men to look for men sponsors and women for women sponsors. Sponsor must be of the same sex. Start asking, and if somebody turns you down, don't take it personally. It may be that they already have too much stuff going on, too much of their own personal stuff going on in their life. Or maybe they're already sponsoring too many people, so they can't dedicate the time for this intimate, vital relationship. so that they will not do you justice by sponsoring you. So don't take it personally. Ask somebody else. Keep looking. Ask God to guide you to the person that He would have sponsor you. And maybe you look for a temporary sponsor. Somebody to at least start the process of understanding what that relationship looks like. In more cases than not, a temporary sponsor ends up becoming a permanent sponsor in recovery. Now I want to take just a few minutes to discuss accountability partners. I'm actually going to read to you a short article that I found a few years ago as I was researching this idea of how our relationships impact us. It's an article written by David Burkus. It's titled, "You're Not the Average of the 5 People You Surround Yourself With." You've probably heard it more times than you can count. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. A quote attributed most often to the motivational speaker Jim Rohn. There's also the quote, "Show me your friends and I'll show you your future." Whichever of these you've heard, the intent is the same. Audit the people around you. Make sure that you're spending time with people who are in line with what you want for your own life. Preferably people better than you, so it raises your average. It's compelling, it's provocative, but it isn't true. At least not in the way that you think. Burkus writes, "I've been researching science of social networks for a book he's writing. And I have found that you are indeed influenced by the people around you, but that influence does not stop anywhere near the 5 people you spend the most time with. It's far more dispersed and reaching. Research suggests it includes people you haven't even met. The first major study on the depth of social influence was conducted by Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler. The duo examined the data from the Birmingham Heart Study, one of the largest and longest running health studies ever. When they realized it covered more than just the heart health of the participants. There were studies of all sorts of medical conditions. And during interviews, there were probes with all sorts of demographic questions, including questions about family members and friends. So they started analyzing the data. And soon, what the effects of family members and friends was on something fairly easy to objectify, easy and objective. Obesity. According to their results, if a friend of yours becomes obese, you yourself are 45% more likely than chance to gain weight over the next 2 to 4 years. More surprisingly, however, they found that if a friend of your friend becomes obese, your likelihood of gaining weight increases by about 20%. Even if you don't know that friend of a friend. The effects continue one more person out. If a friend of your friend develops obesity, you are still 10% more likely than random chance to gain weight as well. Your friends are making you fat, but so are your friends and your friends' friends. Because they had data spanning over 3 decades, they were able to show a real cause and effect relationship between individual friends and friends of friends and weight gain. While the research looked over a variety of explanations, the most likely one appeared to be norms. If your friend is obese or your friend of a friend is obese, that changes your perception of what is acceptable body size and behavior in your eating habits. And it doesn't stop with obesity. In a follow-up study, they found something similar with smoking rates. Using the same social network data they had borrowed from the Framingham Heart Study, they found that if a friend smokes, you are 61% more likely to be a smoker yourself. 61% more likely. This is important data because smoking is so close to drinking and drug use. It's an addiction just the same. So I want you guys who are alcoholics and addicts like me, listen to this close. If your friends are using and drinking still, you're 61% more likely to do so. If a friend of your friend smokes, you are still 29% more likely to smoke. And for a friend of a friend, the likelihood is 11%. Perhaps the most telling study was of happiness. The two researchers found that happy friends make you happier. No surprise there. But if your friend of a friend of a friend is happier with their life, you have a 6% greater likelihood of being happy yourself. Now, 6% may not sound like much, but consider that the study found that if I gave you a $10,000 raise, it would only trigger a 2% increase in your happiness. Your friends really are your future. And the implications is that you don't just need to be more deliberate about who you're spending the most time with. You need to examine your entire network. It influences on your life. You need to know where you sit inside the larger network of your social community. You're not the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. It's way bigger than that. You're the average of all the people who surround you. So take a look around you and make sure you're in the right surroundings. This can mean life or death for us in recovery. Actually, it can mean life or death for anyone. Look at the network of people around you. Make a decision, a constant effort to surround yourself with people who are constantly trying to live a life dedicated to the ways and practices of Jesus. People who are asking the questions about themselves, is what I'm doing what God would have me do for my life? Those are the people you want to start to surround yourself as accountability partners. People to encourage you, to help you along your journey. Accountability partners don't have to be further along in their spiritual journey than you. They don't necessarily need to be further along in their steps. They can be somebody who's right where you're at in their steps. But somebody who is working a life dedicated to recovery. Your accountability partners are like a team. You're doing this life together, supporting one another, holding one another up, caring for one another, being there for one another throughout all there is of life. And this time I'm going to encourage you to start building that network. Build that network via phone. If you don't have people to call, start just looking at our Celebrate Recovery page and see who's liked it. Reach out to me. If you can't make it to small group, reach out to some of the team leaders. They can help guide you in getting connected to the recovery community that's here at Lighthouse Church. I thank you, family, for listening, and I look forward to seeing you guys before long.